الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونصلي ونسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إخوان be O servants of Allah, brothers. I think we covered that, didn't we? Huh?
The one about
buying over?
Yes.
Yes. That's where we stopped at, right? So after he said everything, after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam do not envy one another, do not hate one another, do not tanajashu. What's the English of that? Read it for me. You guys have it? In the hadith.
Where are we?
No, I'm just looking at the hadith, a quick review on it.
Okay. The Tanasha, do not envy each other, do not bid against each other, do not hate each other, and do not turn your backs on each other, and let none of you sell against the sale of another.
Okay. So after this, then the Prophet said, وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا, be O servants of Allah, إِخْوَانًا, or it could be, and be servants of a God, إِخْوَانًا, as brothers, in a sense of if you're, let's go start there. So وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا, you could read that وَكُونُوا, that is be servants of Allah, إِخْوَانًا, brothers, or it could be read kunu ya ibadallah, and so it's a it's implicit harful nida there, ibadallah, ikhwanan, be O servants of Allah, brothers. Okay, so the first translation would imply then that there's a relationship between all the various aspects, qualities which the Prophet warned them not to do. Not to envy one another, not to hate one another, not to turn their backs on one another, not to interfere in the business transactions of each other, where you undercut your brother or the other Muslim. And so then the servant of Allah is the one who doesn't have this hasad and tanajush and tabaghud. He doesn't have these dispraised qualities within himself. And they're brothers. So if there's a fraternal relationship established between the Muslims, then that fraternal relationship should engender within the community qualities that aren't the ones which were dispraised by the Prophet ﷺ. And so he mentions here that is Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, وفي أمر باكتساب ما يصير مسلمون به إخوانا على إطلاق، وذلك يدخل فيه أداء حقوق المسلم على مسلم من رد الإسلام وتشميت عطش وإيادة مريض وتشييع جنازة وإجابة الدعوة وابتداء الإسلام عند اللقاء, etc. ونصح بالغيب. So he mentions here that that when the Muslims وَفِي أَمْرٌ بِاكْتِسَابِ مَا يُسِيرُ مُسْلِمٌ بِهِ إِخْوَانًا عَلَى الْإِطْلَاقِ. In this statement of the Prophet is the desire of the Prophet that the Muslims be believers, the Muslims be brothers in an absolute sense, and that when they are brothers, then they enter into a relationship where the guaranteeing and the maintaining of rights between each other, such as returning a person's salam or responding to a person when they sneeze, or visiting the sick, or participating in a janazah, or answering an invitation, or greeting a person, being the first to greet a person with salam, or giving them sound advice, etc. These are things that are indicative of a fraternal relationship. And then he mentions here that one way to do that is tahadu, as the hadith says, tahadu in hadiyah to the who wahada sadr. The Prophet mentioned here that one thing to do is to share, is to do gift giving with each other, because it helps to remove rancor of the hearts. I think we covered this stuff before.
We did everything up to shaking hands last week.
Yeah. Okay. And then he mentions here tasahafu or tasafahu, that فإنه يذبح الشحناء وتهادوا, that shake hands for it removes rancor or just sort of hatred between each other, and give gifts. Hassan al-Basri said musafatu tazidu fi wad, that shaking of hands increases in mutual love and love. And then Imam Ibn Rajab mentions here the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Anfal verse 63, La anfaqta ma fil ardi jami'an ma alafta bayna qulubihim walakinna Allah alafa baynahum innahu azizun hakim. Had you spent, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that which is in the earth, all of it, you would not have been able to put mutual love or bind their hearts, but it is Allah who put love, bound their hearts between them. Indeed, He is Aziz Hakim. So this is reminding us then of this ni'mah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one who has given us this fraternal, this eternally established fraternal relationship based on faith. So it's a divine act of Allah that brings us together. And this is one of the ni'mas of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we need to honor. And you meet, as I mentioned before, you can meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a practical sense by engaging with people in a proper way. And as Allah is in His karam, in His jud, Allah in His generosity and His magnanimous nature is, and His minnah and His selfless giving towards us, then it doesn't become us then to not be similarly in an attitude when that is the general situation, when we have to be. Of course, we already discussed those points about when divine anger, that anger in the sake of Allah might be necessary. He mentions here a narration from Imran ibn Hussein anhu. قال من نصر أخاه بالغيب وهو يستطيع نصره نصره الله في الدنيا والآخرة. He who assists his brother unknowingly, that is, that the person doesn't know he's being helped, and that person has the capacity to help, Allah shall help him, that is the one who helps, in this life and the life to come. So the idea of seeking to help a Muslim without their knowing it is a virtue to cultivate. And the Prophet narrated from Imam Ahmad and Abu Nu'aym narrate, but it's a weak hadith, but tarhiban, to act as a warning. كبرت خيانة أن تحدث أخاك حديث هو لك مصدق وأنت به كاذب. So great is it as an act of treachery that you speak to your brother a statement and he believes you, but yet you are lying to him. And similar things, so the idea of lying to a Muslim is something we need to be mindful of. Another one is ihtiqar, a Muslim that is belittling a Muslim. And وَهُوَ نَاشِمْ مِنْ كِبْرٍ, it arises out of arrogance. As the Prophet says, الْكِبْرُ بَطْرُ حَقِّ وَغَمْضُ النَّاسِ. Kibr, pride, is disdaining the truth and belittling of people. Like Iblis didn't Allah, he knew Allah and he knows Allah, but his own state of self-importance refused him to accept the divine command, which was a statement of truth from Allah. And at the same time, when Allah had spoken of Adam and his children and descendants as being honored, Iblis belittled that, because he belittled man. He belittled the honor of God himself in honoring humanity. So that's the great sin. But you hear something truthful, but you just, because maybe it didn't come from you, or it goes against your nafs at the moment or whatever, you don't want to accept it, so you just you resist it. It's a serious issue. Al-kibr safahul haq. He mentioned that arrogance is belittling or looking down upon truth. What is dira'u nas, and belittling people. And then he defines here ghamsun nas, that is, what is this? Ghams, it's called ghams in Arabic. Ta'anu alayhim wa izdira'uhum. It's to defame people and to belittle them. When you defame them, you seek to strip their honor from them. You strip, in a sense, to take away their good name. You can do that in very subtle ways. You don't have to do it like on the internet. You don't have to put a billboard up, like politicians do. I mean, our whole system of politics is this whole system of belittling and defaming people and trying to, show them in a very negative light. Mm-hmm. It brings out some of the U.S. Politics brings out some of the most greatest virtues of our people. The virtues of virtuousness, mm-hmm. or lack thereof. وَلَا يَرَاهُمْ شَيْئًا, and it's a person who doesn't see them as important. وَلَا يَرَاهُمْ شَيْئًا, you don't see them as important. You don't even see them as anything. You dehumanize people. This is kibr. This is what kibr is. Some of its signs. Of course, it's the one sin that it's an internal sin that you have to make tawbah from, or you die on it. It's a very serious issue. Like adultery or something like that, it's an external sin. Alcohol consumption is external. Killing a man, or murder is an external sin. But kibr is an internal heart state, but you have, and like other ones, that you have to make tawbah for it. There are two of those sins you have to make tawbah for. One are the kibr and ajab. You have to make. If you have kibr, you need this sort of haughtiness and looking down upon people. I mean, one of the ladies found out in the community, she's like, you know, telling her daughter, you know, you can't have friends who are poor. Yeah. I don't want you to have friends who are poor. It's like, doesn't everyone go to the toilet? Huh? Everyone goes to the toilet. And that thing we flush, it all looks the same. Some doesn't come out gold and silk. Yeah, maybe if you're a silk moth, it comes out silk. But only silk moths are that way. And then we wear it. Actually, it's silk vomit. It's actually vomit. But you know, vomit and the other one come out either entry point, exit point makes a difference. It's filth, najis. So we're all the same. So why are we so? And you see it in the Muslim community a lot. This whole attitude. How, you know, you get a little money and it goes to your head. This goes to people's heads like they're something. Or their job position makes them something. It's really sad. Anyway, Allah will deal with everyone. Everyone will find out who's who in the who's who, the book of who's who with Allah. May Allah make us, you know, the Prophet make us humble, inshallah. Make us simple people and like the earth, inshallah. That anyone can walk on us, but it's okay. But we're still under their feet, but we hold everyone else up. Shall we be people like that before we die, inshallah? Well, if we can't be like that, at least we meet someone who's like that, at least get the benefit of meeting someone like that, inshallah. Allah says in the Quran, in Surah Hujurat, verse 11, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم ولا نساء من نساء عسى أن يكون خيرا منهن. O you who believe, let not a people look down at a people, perhaps they are better than them. Let not women look down upon other women lest they are better than them. It's interesting how that hadith that verse is worded, because qawm includes men and women. Right? It's general. And then Allah repeats women again. Because you still have a lot among women. And they chit-chat amongst each other and look down at Aisha's hijab or Zainab's, you know, oh, she got a new stove. Did you see that? You know, or look, she got a family, you know, a brand new SUV, you know, Cadillac, whatever it is, or, you know, oh, we gotta get one now too, and or hers has got leather seats and ours doesn't, or you know, all those things that, you know, it's like we compete about. Oh, look, they just got a new silver Bentley. We better get like the Bentley, you know, with the, I don't know, like the gold trim on it, you know, because we got to make sure that we're a little bit up in the parking lot of the masjid. It's true. It's all that stuff. Oh, look, you know, especially, you know, wedding parties is like the big. I think the, you know, Turks, Meyhanhana, Fuhushana. You know what Fuhushana is? It's like a prostitution. It's a prostitution place. I sometimes that's what I think wedding parties are half the time. It's pimps and prostitutes running around. I say it why? Because husbands pimping their wives, showing them off, and women showing themselves off. And men the same. It's not a Muslim thing. You know, there's no modesty in it. It's all about show and who's got what and the sort of pretense we show off ourselves, you know. And it's really sad. And I'm beginning to think that's what it's all about. Meat markets of the Muslims. It's all an excuse to have, you know, to celebrate, but celebrate what? I don't know what people are celebrating. Anyway, you can delete that if you want. Or you can keep it, I don't care either. Anyway. So, these are some things about brotherhood. Then the Prophet, then he's beginning to, you know, he's finishing up this statement and making us realize the you know what you know the gist of where this reality is. And then the hadith says, وَقَالَهُ صلى الله عليه وسلم التقوى ها هنا. Taqwa And he pointed towards his blessed chest 3 times. وَيُشِيرُ إِلَى صَدْرِهِ 3 مرات. التقوى ها هنا، التقوى ها هنا، التقوى ها هنا. And one is that Allah has ennobled humanity with this idea of taqwa. Allah has honored us with this potential of a thing which He's defined called taqwa, that tension state you exist in. It's like, the meniscus, which is that little area on the water, right? And above the air and below is the water. A believer is always like on the meniscus. He's potential he could fall into and sink, or he can fly off. So he's in this sort of tension zone. He's in the hope of Allah, in the raja, an expectation of something wonderful that's blowing off and going high into the heavenly direction. Or you can sink, And so we live in that tension. And taqwa is that tension. Taqwa is keeping things in a fear of Allah balanced out, properly orienting yourself. فَرُبَّ مَنْ يَحْقِرُهُ النَّاسِ لِضِيفِهِ وَقِلَّةِ حَظِّهِ بِالدُّنْيَا وَهُوَ عَظْمُ قَدْرٌ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى مِمَّنْ لَهُ قَدْرٌ فِي الدُّنْيَا فَإِنَّ النَّاسِ إِنَّمَا يَتَفَاوَتُونَ بِحَسْبِ تَقْوَى. And so Ibn Rajab mentioned, how many is it a person who belittles people because of their weakness, or because they don't have much in the dunya? And yet that person, his measure with God is great. That is the one who's being belittled. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a different measure, the measure of taqwa. Inna akramakum indallah atqakum. And so Allah ta'ala says, indeed, in Surah Al-Hujurat verse 13, indeed the most noble, the most generous, karam, the best of you, with God, in the presence of inda here is, inda is a harf, is a dharf, and it defines like in possession or in presence. Okay, like you possess something, or you're in the presence of something. It means to be with it. Like indi, if I say indi column, means I actually have a pen with me. If I say li column, I have a pen. It doesn't mean it's with me. It means I own it. But when I say inda, it means it's actually present with me. So Allah says that those who are present with God amongst you are those who have taqwa. So there's a meaning here in that verse about being in divine presence, and divine presence is manifested when you are in a state of taqwa. And that's the beginning of after Fatiha, after Surah Al-Fatiha, what's the first quality in Surah Al-Baqarah which Allah begins the whole Quran with? After Allah speaks about the Quran, La Rayba Fi, what is it? Huda lil-muttaqin. So after the first 7 verses, which is everything else after the Fatiha is an exposition of the Fatiha, the actualizing of the Fatiha's intent. And the first quality after guidance is what? First is the book, La Rayba Fi, Huda, and the idea of guidance, as an idea guidance gift from God, but for whom? The people who have this balanced state with God, who believe in God, who fear God. And the fearing of God is that you fear Allah on many levels. Where fear is when you fear to harm someone, you fear to transgress limits, you fear not to have good character traits. A lot of levels of this idea of caution in the believer. So Allah has honored us. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't looking at us the way the world looks at each other. And the Prophet said, Akaram taqwa. Nobility is taqwa. But then he mentions here, taqwa, where is its place though? Is in the heart. Allah says in Surah Al-Hajj, verse 32, Man yu'adhim sha'ir Allah, innaha min taqwa al-qulub. He who magnifies the symbols of God, that is of piety or taqwa of hearts. Right? And so, of course, it's in the context of the Kaaba and the Safa and Marwa and the sacrificial animals. These are signs of God, Sha'ir Allah. So whoever magnifies them, the things of Allah, the things that are symbolic of a godly relationship and the God-centered activity through ritual, for example, and things like that, that person, it's because it arises out of their heart. It's an issue of your heart. And then he mentions here, to go back to, if you to have more discussion on this, is the hadith, لو أن أولكم آخركم وإنسكم وجنكم كانوا على أتقى قلب رجل واحد منكم ما زال ذلك في ملكي شيئا. And then the hadith, if the first, the last of you, the mankind, jinn kind of you, were to have the measure of the heart of the most pious heart of any man amongst you. Of course, that's the Prophet ﷺ. You will not increase Allah, and you will not increase me in my kingdom at all. This hadith Qudsi. And so he said you can go back and read the commentary on that to understand more about this issue of taqwa qulub, this idea of taqwa of the hearts. Therefore, since this is a thing of the heart, only Allah Ta'ala knows its true state. None of us have a special device to measure taqwa. There's no taqwa meter out there, or a litmus test where you collect someone's spittle and you can do a taqwa measure on them and something like that. Inna Allah la yanzuru illa sudurakum wa amwalakum walakinna yanzuru illa qulubukum wa a'malakum. The hadith is Allah Ta'ala doesn't look at your forms or your wealth, but instead looks into your hearts and your actions. Therefore, you see people who are beautiful, or people who have, lots of wealth and have all the things of the world, but it doesn't mean they have taqwa. It doesn't mean that they're special with Allah. But a person can have less than that, but his heart will be full, mamlu'un, with taqwa. And he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, ألا أخبركم بأهل الجنة كل ضعيف متضاعف. Should I not inform you of the people of paradise? It's every week and small person. لا أقسم على الله لا أبره. If he swears by Allah, Allah would honor that oath. ألا أخبركم بأهل النار, and I shall not inform you of the people of hellfire. So he mentions here that the mutada'af is all those people who are made belittled by others, and people, yutajabbaruna, the people oppress them and harm them. They're the small people out there. They're the ones who are the people of paradise. While the atab is the person who has a really dry, he says, a jafi shadid khusuma fi batil. There's a person who's dry and he's he's a rough kind of person, who's argumentative. And Jawad is a person who has a lot of wealth, but he's niggardly with it. He doesn't want to share. He says these are the people, are people of hellfire. See, and this definition has nothing to do with faith. Interesting enough. Of course, one could say, well, since he's speaking to the Muslims, obviously faith may be a prerequisite. But this is like a universal. Remember the Prophet ﷺ said what? That the best of you in Jahiliyyah are the best of you in Islam. And that people bring in from their past things which Islam perfects. Or people bring in things from their past, and when they hit Islam, it just makes them go to hell. It exasperates them. It's a synergist towards hell. You know, like the Prophet's uncle, some of them, they were probably, before Islam, they had their own maybe ways of being. Maybe they had some good virtuous qualities, but they also had hidden qualities. Maybe they didn't show them. Maybe they were really stingy, or they were really haughty, and they didn't really show it. And because in the context of their time, it was okay. It was acceptable. But as soon as the Quranic revelation came, it exasperated their internal state, and it became a curse for them. The exposure to the Quran was an exposure not towards mercy, but hell. And that's what the Quran will do to you. It'll either raise you up when it hits you, or it'll tear you down. You know, it's either a life-giving rain, or it's a consuming fire. And that's how the Quran is, because this is what God does. God, you know, manifests this. You know, how can I say? You know, the Quran's like a net thrown out into the sea. It just brings in the fish, and once all the fish are there, then it picks through them. It keeps the good one over here, and throws the bad one over here. But otherwise, they're all swimming together. But when it catches you, it separates you. You know, it's a furqan. It separates you into the right pile and to the left pile. Okay.
See, that means in terms of what do we mean by exposure to Quran?
I mean that you reflect upon it. It hits you, and you hear about it, and you reflect upon it. You read it, you consider it, you listen to its message. Things like that. That's what I mean. I don't mean just walk up there and show someone a Quran like bam, it's gonna. And maybe it might, if Allah wills, it will happen. But that's just not how we perceive it happening. It's about being proper exposure. Then he mentions here that tahajjat jannatu wa nar. So Jannah and Nar had an argument. فقالت النار, the fire said, أُرِثْتُ بِمُتَكَبِّرِينَ وَمُتَجَبِّرِينَ. I received the haughty, arrogant ones, the ones who are mutajabbir, the ones who are overlording people. And Jannah says, وقالت جنة لا يدخلوني إلا ضعفاء الناس وسكتهم. And Jannah then says to the hellfire, one of the weak amongst people and those who are fallen down, enter me. Then Allah will say to paradise, Anta rahmati arhamu bika man sha'a min ibadi. You are my mercy, with whom I show mercy, to whom I will, of my servants. Wa qala nar anta adabi. You are my punishment. U'adhibu bika man sha'a, and I punish whom I will of my servants. So, inshallah, make us a people who are du'afa, maskutun, inshallah, to be in Jannah, inshallah. Then the Prophet continued then, he said, بِحَسْبِ أَمْرٍ من الشر أن يحقر أخاه مسلم. Sufficient for a person of evil is that he belittles his brother Muslim. You know, if you want to know what's, you know, if you want to look at something and say, well, you know, if you want to do something evil, here's something to do. You go do this. Go and belittle a Muslim. That would be enough evil for you right there. And the greatest evil is kibr, arrogance. لا يدخل الجنة من في قلبه مثقال ذرة من كبر. Not one of you, no one shall enter the garden except he who has the amount of a dust particle of kibr. Dharra, small seed, small. Here's a small amount of kibr. And the hadith Qudsi, أعز إزاره وكبر رداءه فمن نزعني أذبته. عز, that is, greatness is my wraparound, my izar, and pride is my rida. You know, so those like your two pieces of clothing for Hajj, right? Your izar and your rida, you wear them. So izzat and kibr belong to Allah. And he who he who competes with me in having them, or like he who wants to, really naza means like to like he who wants to disrobe me of them, I will punish him. It's like, you know, so you want to take Allah's two garments and wear them yourself. That's what it means. You want to take them and wear them yourself. You want, you know, the cloak of is and of you know, you want the wraparound of is and the shawl of kibr. Then you'll see what happens when you wear these two things. It's a bad outcome.
You said that kibr is like an internal state. If you have this against people but you treat them well outwardly, it's still a sin if you have it in your heart?
Yeah, you should get it out. Work on it.
Wouldn't it show up if it's in your heart?
That's what I'm saying. If it doesn't, if you hide it and you treat people well, you act like it's not, and you're not arrogant.
You know, kibr isn't where you know, the problem isn't saying, he said kibr, you define it wrong, it's where you belittle people. It's not like you like good things. You know, it's different to like a good thing and be grateful for it, and to like a good thing and also belittle other people who don't have it, or you're haughty when you use it. Okay, it's a different. It's a very subtle thing. I mean, this is not like, oh, there's my kibr, you know, it's that black spot. Let me take it out. Sin isn't that way generally. It's much more organic. It's not metallic. You can just take it out like a pacemaker on your heart. Wished it was. Unfortunately, it's more like hardening of the arteries. Much more systemic than we would imagine. You know, you have to be mindful if you look down upon people. You think little of them. That's the sign of kibr. If you're looking down upon people, you see them as less in some way. That's in you. Then you need to catch it and deal with it. Like we mentioned on Thursday about personal accountability. You have to examine yourself daily, nightly, about what's going on, how you're dealing with people, your thoughts. That's an important approach. And then have a good personal conversation with Allah and your misbah or your tasbih and or sajada, and pray to Allah to remove things or forgive them also. The Prophet said, "Man qala halaka nas fahuwa ahlakuhum." The person who says the people are destroyed, he's the most destroyed of them. But if you say it because out of sadness, according to Imam Malik, if you say this out of sadness at the state of people, of the religion, that's okay. But if you say it because you think you're better than them, like you're the saved group, you're the saved sect, everyone else is damned, doomed, and done with, the 3 Ds. Are you a damn doomed done with Muslim? Like that. Then that's a warning to you. You know, that's very common in our sectarian mindset these days. People who aren't with us, it's George Bushian Islam. Huh? It is. Because we think everyone else is not with us. A gentleman said to a boy the other day, he said that if, you know, they do the standing up for the salawat on the Prophet after, you know, Jummah. Some people do. And so he told this boy that if you don't do that, it means that Allah hasn't guided you to that, like hasn't given you good in that. And I just thought that was a very strange thing to say. I'm not saying it's not, it could be truth in what he said, but this is one of the Hafiz boys, you know, and I said, well, you should have just told him, obviously God has not given you good also because he's not giving you the hifz of the Quran. You could have said that. You know, you think you're doing something, oh, see, God's guiding me to that. And there's something even greater than that, which is the Quran itself, and you're not even memorizing it, and you don't even see that you don't have that, then God hasn't guided you to that. Don't you see? What made you think that what you did was so, you know, cat's meow of Allah? you know, and then like, and so it's like, it's sad to think that, and it's like, well, I gave my answer, you heard my answer. But something like that, it's just really sad. Our self-righteousness and our sectarian-based self-righteousness, how we think that we're right and everyone else out there is wrong. That's why this book, that Tafriq al-Bayna by Imam Ghazali, is reading that text is a really threatening text to a lot of sectarian Muslims today, which I think we all have a bit of sectarianism in us, unfortunately, because Ghazali strips down to the minimum bare bones of what it is that you can actually say a person is misguided, and that's only if you can confirm that he actually thinks whatever the Prophet is a lie in some form. The problem with that is that people use that argument and say this, well, you know, since you don't agree with our interpretation of something, you're saying that it's a lie. And of course, it's always based upon interpretation. So it's where a person's ijtihad becomes definitive, so definitive in their view that it is truth and not merely ijtihad. You understand? So when we talk about the Prophet being nur, yes, the Quran mentions Allah being nur, that's clearly there. But when it gets the details of trying to define that, you think your details of defining, which are acts of ijtihad, are statements of truth themselves that are actually informing us what God really intended by that. And that's what you're positing out there. And that's a very dangerous way to go. So you basically say, not only do we affirm what God has said, we actually know what God meant by it at the same time, exactly what he meant. And we're now defining you based upon that detailed understanding of what God really means by it. Da-da. And since you don't meet our standard, da-da, by default, you are calling a lie to God's statement. That's the corollary of it. It's a really interesting syllogistic set of reasoning there. It's got like 18 propositions to it, and this is the result. And, you know, and a lot of them are facetious, but as far as they're concerned, it's good logic. But seriously, I think it comes down to that. That's why Ghazali goes down to these 5 levels of how you understand being, existence. And how every type of ijtihad is on some level of that. From something clearly there to just something which is intellectual or metaphorical. And those are always a perception of things in the real world. And they all play into a level of understanding. and of giving you understanding. And you have to be able to find, you can usually find in some person's discussion, it fits in one of those. And once you can fit it in one of those categories, he's still speaking truth from that position of seeing something. He's not denying it. Mm-hmm. He's just not he's not accepting your reasoning, how you came to that conclusion, or the conclusions you draw from that through your reason. It's like someone on Facebook, did you see my posting on Facebook today? Someone was talking about U.S. politics, you know, and you know, it's one of these Hizbut Tahrir people, right? How, you know, this whole problem of democracy and all that, you know, you can see happening in the United States, all the problems there, you know, see, that proves it's a man-made system. And I typed in, so God took away the caliphate from the Muslims, so that must be, that's also in the God's will too, isn't it? I mean, it's like you're complaining about these kuffar and their corrupt systems, but if ours was such a good system, caliphate, then why doesn't it exist even now? That meant that God wasn't pleased with it in some way. I mean, you got to see that what you condemn them for in some things you don't like, it can come back to you because you're not realizing that we don't have that. That meant that there's something wrong, and it's the divine will that we shouldn't have this now in some form, if you even have it at all anymore. It's always really odd how people can see one thing and they don't see, you know, how you can just turn that same argument on themselves and it would bite them. But, you know, it's like trying to hold a cobra in your hand and make it bite someone and not realize it can just bite you too. You just turn it towards you. Or, you know, the famous, you point that finger and you got three pointing at you, you know, it's the same. Anyway, whatever. Seriously, humanity is like, people are just, it's seriously, God hasn't done away with us, you know, stuff like, you know, truly we deserve to be whacked away. It's like, you know, we're a bunch of, there's a lot of tomfoolery in humanity. You know, tomfoolery, there's a lot of it in humanity. I know Sheikh Mahmoud was saying once in a minbar in Turkey, he said if the Sahaba saw us, he would say, are you Muslims? And we would say, if we saw a Sahabi, are you a human being? Because our idea of what it means to be a human being is more like, you know, more on a level of some evolutionary Australopithecine kind of level, or Homo habilis level. You know, we haven't yet found the sapient human, the wise human yet. Whatever Homo sapiens are, we've not met too many of them. And he continues, Kullu Muslim ala Muslim haramun, damuhu wa ma'luhu wa irduhu. Every Muslim is, in regards to certain things that are prescribed. To every Muslim, these things are prescribed. It's hard to translate that. Good name. His blood, his wealth, and his honor. So this is then the summation of what he's saying here. When you envy each other, hate one another, undercut one another, what do you? When you don't have love, what are you doing? You're going to hurt each other. You're going to spill blood. You're going to hurt. You're going to hurt each other in regards to wealth, and you're going to dishonor each other. This is where it all comes down. This is this distillation of what's going on here. Is issues of blood, wealth, and honor. And then these are the things. This hadith then lays out this principle of these qaida, these maxims, and these are the the principles on which the Sharia is based. The maqasid of Sharia. These are three of them right there: preservation of life, preservation of wealth, and preservation of honor. Preservation of religion is another one, right? And preservation of lineage is another one. So this is then our fundamental principles that the Prophet wants us to understand, that when you mutually envy, mutually hate, mutually hurt each other, mutually work to undercut each other's business, you're not brothers, you don't love, you don't seek to see him more than you see yourself, then you will hurt each other. You will physically hurt each other. You will steal and rob from each other. And you will belittle each other. You know, what God has honored, you will dishonor. The honor given, you will dishonor it. And in the process, you'll dishonor yourself. And so this is well known that he said this also an Arafah. Inna dama'akum wa amwalakum wa a'radakum alaykum haramun. Indeed, your blood, your wealth, and your honor is amongst you haram, for sacrosanct. Ka'hurmati yawmakum, as the sacredness of this day of yours. Fi shahrikum hada, as in this month of yours. Fi baladikum hada, as in this city of yours, this land of yours. So just as Mecca is sacred, just as Medina is sacred, just as, you know, Dhul Hijjah is sacred, just as Arafah is sacred, just as Jummah is sacred, and you honor those things as a Muslim, so is blood, wealth, and honor of any other Muslim just as sacred as the Kaaba, as the plain of Arafah, as the city of Mecca, Medina, as those things which we honor. And it's funny how we honor these things, and yet we forget to honor the subject or the purpose of why these things are given special status with God. God doesn't honor Arafah, Yom Arafah, because God is so concerned about some day of the year. God honors Arafah, and it's a sign of what He allowed. It's bringing people forward. It's a day for humanity, not for anyone else. The Kaaba is a place, not because God is interested in a cubicle building on the planet Earth. Why would He be interested in stuff like that? There are much more fascinating things in the universe than the stones of the Kaaba. Magnificent structures in the universe, amazing things to be amazed at. You know? It's honored because it reflects something of a higher reality, paradise, and it's honored and it's special because humanity can come there and humans can find something with God there which makes them better humans if they want. That's why it's special. So if we honor these things, these Sha'r Islam, Sha'r Allah, these signs of God, and how much more than every human being but himself but a sign of God. Because nothing has as many qualities of divine reflections in it than a human being, as far as we know. So if there is a sign of God, of the Sha'r Allah, a Shi'at Allah, a sign of God, a symbol of God, it would be, first of all, not a goat with garlands on it in Mecca. It is one of them, obviously. It would be the human being who put the garland on the goat. So you see, that requires hurma. That requires a respect towards it, which, you know, but we don't do that. Maybe when we see each other, Yawm al-Qiyamah, lights, pillars of light, you know, looking at each other, maybe then we'll realize what it meant to be, what the honor of a human being. Maybe the person sleeping under the bridge, or the wife is being abused by her husband, beaten with a brown, you know, blue, you know, the woman who's got acid thrown in her face in someplace in Pakistan or something like that. It happened. You know. When that woman is Yawm al-Qiyamah with light shown, and that man is getting acid thrown in his face, then he'll understand the value of what a human being was. Or that guy just, who was that guy who just got that, you know, the trial in, you know, in The Hague, you know.
Charles Taylor?
Yeah, you know, all those severed hands and feet, people mutilated. We'll find out Yawm al-Qiyamah, you know, when blood is in the musk and it smells like musk. And where limbs have light, and where people then are butchered. Because the butchery of Allah is a different thing. When Allah tears you up, it's not a one-time deal, it tears you up in Jahannam and you get reconstituted and torn up again. You know, it's subhanAllah, you know, it's really... I mean, there's no, you know, this is something about Islam, about this message of Muhammad is that you won't find it in words like this of any other religion. It's in a unique way how, you know how Allah brings forth this whole graphicness of hell and heaven. It's very graphic for us. Because Allah, I think, you know, the final revelation, it has to hit humanity to really realize that what's going on here, how you play your lives out with each other, you really engage in hell or you engage in paradise. You know, everything is prepared in Jahannam for any, is not because God is sadistic. Because Allah is making us experience the things that we chose to experience. He's magnifying that which is in our nature that we ourselves do. And he's letting us experience it. You chose to be this way. So now experience the reality of what you've chosen. Because this is the secret of your greatness with me. And just as we have virtuous qualities, they become magnified in paradise, and real qualities of beauty, of grace, of permanence. And you get them there. So, but even though I don't know, it's hard to describe those things for me. And so the Prophet said, Allahumma hal balagtu, Allahumma hal balagtu, O Allah, have I not conveyed? O Allah, have I not conveyed? And he said, Allah la yuballigh shahid minkum al-ghaib. Let the one who is witness convey it to the one who is absent. That he who is present convey it to the one who is absent. You know that your job as a person is, you heard these things, now go out and tell others. If there was like, if that's like, if Christians talk about in the Great Commission, to go out and preach Christ crucified to all the world. This is our Great Commission, in a sense. Can tell everyone that you have honor with God, you have status with God. Honor each other. Honor your relationships. Honor your relationships through your wealth, through your bodies. Honor, honor, honor. Convey this to people, that they come to Yawm al-Qiyamah noble. What time is it?
11:15.
What's that?
11:15.
Okay, so that's about it. The other things to say, alhamdulillah, I think I want to stop the hadith now. I think I said a lot. Okay, there's more things to say, but another time, another place. Okay, just a quick break.